We are in Highfield Country Park. And it is, what day is it today?
Tuesday!
It's Tuesday, a very important day.
Yeah, summer solstice.
Summer solstice, thank you, Moy, thank you, Shannon. We're here at summer solstice and the woods are completely green, all the leaves have grown. It's almost like having a hug from trees as we sit around the circle. And we're going to have a little party of stories, a story party, and we're going to tell stories that are all about the summer. So let's sit around the fire, which is like a small version of the big fire, which is up in the sky. What's that called?
Sun.
The sun is at its highest point. It's burning bright. It's giving us the longest day. And we're going to sit around this little fire. And Shannon and I were talking about inviting the goddesses in and the gods to come and sit around the circle and listen to our stories. Once upon a time, there were two brothers. Let me see your thumbs. Two brothers. And when they grew up, they became very different because they were two farmers. And the first farmer, he was called Zebedee. What was his name?
Zebedee!
Zebedee, he was a lovely guy. If he was here, he would love to join in with the storytelling. He loved an easy life. He loved laughing. He loved storytelling. He loved nature. And he worked quite hard, but not too hard, because he loved to smell the roses. And while he had a farm on one side of a stone circle, and on the other side of the stone circle over here was his brother, who was also a farmer, and his name was Zachary. What was his name?
Zachary!
Zebedee and Zachary. Say it with me. Zebedee and Zachary. And Zachary, who was the complete opposite of his brother, he was a hard-working man that always wanted to make lots of money. And he never thought about singing or dancing or enjoying nature or sitting around the fire and inviting the gods in to listen to the storytelling. He just wanted to make as much money as he can. And he didn't like the stone circle that was in the middle of their farm because he hated it, Shannon, because he thought it was getting in the way of ploughing the fields. If there wasn't a stone circle, he could take it out of the way and he could plough the fields and make more crops and make more money. But Zebedee...
Why doesn't he just eat the crops?
Well, he ate some of the crops himself, but some of them he had to sell so he could make money. But Zebedee, the other brother, he loved those stone circles and he remembered what his father always used to tell him, that on Midsummer's Eve, the day before the solstice, you should pick a little posy of flowers, dog roses, white clover, red clover, and buttercups, and you could leave them on the biggest and the oldest of the stones, and by doing that, you'd be inviting the gods into the circle of the stones, and they would give a blessing on the fields and on the animals and on yourself. But his father always said, whatever you do, don't stay at midnight, because midnight is the time when the stones start to wobble and the singing sound and they go down to the river, and you don't want to get away with a stone, Megan, if it's starting to move down towards the river. And one day when he went to leave his lovely, beautiful posy of flowers, he just stayed long enough to have a cup of tea, and he drank his tea. But it must have been a very hot day, and maybe the heat and working that day, and he fell asleep beside one of the stones. And he only woke up when he heard this song. Limestone, sandstone, granite and grit. Try it. Limestone, sandstone, granite and grit. And as he looked up, he saw, in fact, he felt the stone behind his back beginning to shake. And he looked up and he saw all the stone circles. Imagine there's a stone circle around us, and each one of those stones is started to shake and tremble. And then somehow they started to rock from one side to another like big old giants. And they pulled themselves up and out, and they started to shuffle and shuffle and shuffle down from the stone circle and down towards the river, which just lies beyond there. And Zebedee, he was amazed, but he was also frightened, so he went to the edge of the field and he watched as the stones, they bent around the middle. Can you make me a creaking, groaning noise? And they drank from the river, and they got back up, and then they slowly shuffled back into their positions. And Zebedee, how do you think he felt when he saw this?
Sad.
So why was he sad?
Because he was too busy sleeping.
He was sad that if he got caught in the way, he would be crushed, but he didn't get in the way. He was amazed. He'd never seen anything like it in his whole long life, and he was quite an old man. And so he ran back home, and he had a little bit of sleep, but in the morning he got up and he went to see his brother, Zachary. And he said, Zachary, Zachary, you can't believe what I've seen last night. I fell asleep by the stones and I heard this amazing song. And when I looked up, there was all the stones and they moved from the circle out of the earth, down to the river. They went, and they drank some of the water, went back. And Zachary, do you think he believed his brother?
No. Nope.
He said, you are a foolish brother. You must have been dreaming.
I think I know something.
Maybe the sunstroke has got to your head. I think those stones are useless. There's no magic. There's no mystery. I know what I'm going to do, said Zachary. I'm going to take 4 of those stones, the biggest, oldest of the 4 stones. I'm going to drag them out of the ground and I'm going to build a big barn so I can keep my crops and my corn and make even more money. And that's what he did. Well, let's see, Patrick. That's a nice idea. He got horses and ropes and servants and himself, and he pulled and he dragged and he managed to get the stones, 4 of the stones, out of the ground, got them to his own land, and he put 4 stones up into the ground so that they were the corners of a barn. And then he chopped down trees from the forest, like this forest here, oak trees and ash trees, and he built all the walls, and he put above the top of the 2 stones that were at the front of the barn a big piece of oak, which was like a lintel, which is the frame of the door. So the barn had a door. And then when he was finished, he filled it full of his crops. But the seasons came past, the hay fever went away, and after summer there is what season after summer?
Spring.
Not quite.
No, it's
autumn. What's after autumn?
Winter.
Winter. What's after winter?
Summer. Spring.
Nearly spring, and turns back into
Summer.
a whole cycle of the wheel of the year. It was summer, and he had his barn all finished, and he went to bed to count his money. But as he went to bed, through the open window, because it was a very warm summer's evening, through the open window, he heard a strange little song coming from his own barn. Limestone, sandstone, granite and grit. You're good. Limestone, sandstone, granite and grit. And it got quite loud. Limestone, sandstone, granite and grit. And he looked through the window and he saw all 4 corners of his barn wobbling and shaking and creaking and groaning. What's happening to my barn? There was no wind, there was no storm, there was no earthquake. And he put on his trousers and he put on a shirt and he ran downstairs and he got out the door and he went and he tried to. He was a foolish man. He tried to push the stones so they stopped shaking. Do you think that was a good idea?
No, he's
Why not? He's going to get hurt because as the stones were shaking, the piece of wood, the oak lintel that was above the door where the barn...
fall on him.
It fell down. After 3, you can do it with me. 1, 2, 3, splat! And there he was, under the oak. Dead, probably.
Until this day.
Buried until this day. Or maybe he's kind of underneath there, waiting to tell the story. But he never got out of that heavy oak frame.
How do you know?
But, well, that's the story that was told to me. But Zebedee, who has a son called Zachary, after his brother, and Zachary told me about the story, and he said every year after that, he made sure that he left a little posy of summer flowers on the stones, but he always made sure that he went back home before midnight. And sometimes, just as he was like, you know, on the last leg of your journey, just as he was getting home, he could hear the very quiet noise of the stones singing. Limestone, sandstone, granite and grit. Last time. Limestone, sandstone, granite and grit. And that is the end of that.